Ose shalom bimromav, uya ase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, uya ase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, uya ase shalom aleinu. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ose shalom bimromav, uya ase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, uya ase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, uya ase shalom aleinu. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam.
Yase shalom,
Shalom
shalom aleinu
aleinu
ve'al kol Yisrael.
ve'al kol Yisrael.
Yase shalom,
Yase shalom,
shalom aleinu
ve'al kol Yisrael.
Yase
Shalom,
Yase shalom,
shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom,
Yase shalom,
yase shalom ve'al kol ha'olam.
la la ya la 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 ya la la la. שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים לשמחה על שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני קהל ישראל. My days are busy, there's so much to do and see, so many people expect so very much of me, because I love them, I always try to do my best, and as the sun sets, I make this Shabbat request. Shalom Rav, give me peace, oh God, I pray. Shalom Rav, peace for each moment of my day. Shalom Rav, within me plant a peaceful seed. Peace for the world begins with a peaceful me. When I am peaceful, trouble cannot follow me. I can help others to feel happy, to feel free. Give me the will, God, because it's what I want to do, to spread to others the peace that comes from you. Shalom Rav, give me peace, oh God, I pray. Shalom Rav, peace for each moment of my day. Shalom Rav, within me plant a peaceful seed. Peace for the world begins with a peaceful me. Peace for the world begins Shir Chadash,
Shir Hadash,
Shiru,
Shiru,
Ladonai,
Ladonai,
Kol Haaretz.
Haaretz.
Let the heavens rejoice,
Heavens
and
rejoice,
the earth exult.
the earth
Let
exalts.
the sea and all within it thunder. Sing to Adonai,
Adonai,
a brand new song.
brand new
Sing
song.
praises for all God's wonders. Shiru,
Shiru,
Ladonai,
Adonai,
Shiru, Shir Chadash,
Shir Hadash,
Shiru,
Shiru,
Ladonai,
Adonai,
Kol Haaretz. Let every voice make a joyful noise
joyful
to
noise.
God's glory among the nations. With the rivers and trees,
The rivers and trees,
we clap our
we
hands.
clap our
A
hands.
magnificent celebration. Shiru,
Shiru,
Ladonai,
Adonai,
Shiru,
Shiru,
Shir Chadash,
Shir Hadash,
Shiru,
Shiru,
Ladonai,
Adonai,
Kol Haaretz.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So last Shabbat, we were shaken by the anti-Semitic assault which took place at Temple Beth Israel in Colleyville, Texas. The hostage crisis hit many of us very hard, and this entire week, some of us have been on edge. A close friend who is also a local news anchor reached out to me about doing a story, but she too expressed that it all feels so hopeless. She said, all too tender, and this is just exhausting. And she's right. I told her that I couldn't get over the absurdity that this hostage taker felt it urgent to speak to my colleague in Manhattan, Rabbi Angela Buchdahl, because he truly believed that as one of the most influential and well-known rabbis in the country, she would have the authority and the power to get the woman released from jail whom the hostage taker was adamant about freeing. Truly. This age-old canard that Jews rule the world and pull the puppet strings is not just a relic theory found written in the protocols of the elders of Zion, but it is alive and well and was lived out last Shabbat in Colleyville, Texas, at Temple Beth Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Blessed are you, God, sovereign of the universe, who frees the captives. Look in virtually any prayer book of any stream of Judaism, and you will find this prayer in the section known as the Blessings of the Dawn. The invocation comes right at the beginning. So integral is this idea to the Jewish people and the Jewish psyche that we praise God again and again for freeing captives. And then we do it later in the service during the Amidah, one of our most central prayers. We are shaken. We are not okay. But we will bounce back. We are resilient because we cannot afford not to be. That resiliency is part of the Jewish DNA. Without it, we would have disappeared centuries ago. But we refuse to go away. And to my beloved news anchor friend, I say, we are exhausted. It is not radical to say that going to services, whether to converse with God or with the neighbors that you see only once a week, should not be an act of courage. Deborah Lipstadt reminded us of this in her article this week. And yet, we were once again reminded that it can be precisely that. Among those morning blessings that are part of the blessings of the dawn is one that thanks God for opening up the eyes of the blind. Jewish eyes did not need to be opened. But this week, I hope that the eyes of our non-Jewish friends and neighbors who may once upon a time have dismissed the severity of anti-Semitism in the world and its consequences, I hope their eyes have been opened just a bit. Rabbi Citron Walker is a flat-out hero. I pray that I never have to do what he did, and I hope I have the same courage and wherewithal if I do have to. There's an additional blessing during these early prayers that thanks God for allowing us to stand tall and straight. We are standing tall and we are standing straight, but we are checking for the exits. God who frees the slave and liberates the captive, look with mercy on the people of Colleyville, Texas, Congregation Beth Israel, and the rescued hostages there, victims of hatred and anti-Semitism. Grant them shelter and solace, comfort and consolation, blessing and renewal, so that recovery can begin, leading to a complete restoration of heart and mind and spirit. Release them from suffering, release them from trauma, return them in wholeness to life. Bless the first responders and law enforcement professionals who brought their hearts and their skills to the hours of standoff and to the task of rescue. May they also know freedom from the horror of this ordeal. To those of hate and terror in any land, of any faith, you will not succeed. To the anti-Semite, my people have seen your kind for generations. We have outlived you all. To our Muslim and Christian brothers and sisters who abhor as we do violence and eschew hatred, we extend our hands to one another so that this community can heal, so that throughout the world we become a shining light of blessing. Hine lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael. See that the guardian of all people neither slumbers nor sleeps. God, keep us from evil. God, guard our soul. Hand of love and shelter, grant the people of Colleyville, Texas, your protection, your wholeness and healing, and your peace.
Yai, dai, 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 dai. Yai, dai, 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 dai. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam. Shigam lanu kol tov. Amen. Selah, Selah. Meshig malchem kol tov. Selah, Selah. Uyig malchem kol tov. You carried me forward, filled me with courage, sheltered me through the storm. Wrapped in your blessing, a love so embracing, once broken I am now whole. Selah, Selah, Meshig malchem kol tov. Selah, Selah, uyig malchem kol tov. Selah, Selah, Meshig malchem kol tov. Selah, Selah, uyig malchem kol tov. Yai, dai, 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 dai. Yai, dai, 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 dai.
On this Shabbat, we will do what we've always done as a Jewish community. We will celebrate life and we will celebrate this day of rest. And we'll do that by lighting our Shabbat candles. And I'm going to ask Simone and Lev if they'll come forward to help us light the candles this evening.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav V'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, creator of the universe, creator of the universe. By your commandments we are sanctified as we kindle the lights of Shabbat. Amen.
We continue welcoming each other by welcoming in our Shabbat angels with the words of Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sechem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
We rise together for the words of Hatzikadosh.
Yikra v'yikra shamei Rabba Ba'alma divrach yirutei Yamlich malchutei B'chayachon v'yomechon U'chayerecho Beit Yisrael Ba'gala u'vizman Kariv v'yimeru
Amen.
Yehei Shemei Rabba Maforach L'olam ul'almei almaya Yitbarach Yitbarach v'yishtabach Yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei V'yithadar v'yit'alev v'yit'halal Shemei Dekudesha Le'ela min kol birchata V'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata Damiran belma v'imeru.
Amen.
Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed HaMevorach
invite you to please be seated, and we continue with the prayer of Mariv Arvim.
With the setting of the sun, you separate the light from the darkness. We praise you, Adonai, creator of the moon and stars. And as the evening falls, we trust that day and night are equal partners. We thank you for the day and rest in the tranquility of night. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chokma p'teach she'arim ובתבונה משנה איתי ומחליף את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים.
Invite you, if you'd like, and as your practice, to close your eyes for the recitation of the words of the Shema. And if you'd like, the words are also for you on the screens.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
We continue together with the words from Deuteronomy, the words of Ve'ahavta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
So, in our Torah, the story, come to Egypt with me, because you may remember that as soon as our people leave Egypt, pretty much right away, they start to complain. And Moses, very frustrated, asks, why do you try the Lord? Why do you try God this way? And the word for try, tenasun, which is Hebrew and has the same two letters, nun and samech, that spell nes, which is the word for miracle. Moses is reminding the people that they just experienced an astounding miracle, and they are turning it into a complaint. Now, we get this dynamic. We know what this is about, because when the pandemic first broke out, we prayed for a vaccine. And then, miraculously, vaccines were created. And suddenly, the distribution, the availability, even the very speed with which they were created has, for some, turned into a grievance. It seems as if there is no beneficence and no blessing that we human beings will not quarrel about. Whether it is the end of slavery, the gifts of modern medicine, perhaps we're just not programmed to be thankful. Every nes, every miracle, turns into a nisayon, turns into a trial. But thank God, the miracles keep coming, and maybe we will yet learn to turn from grumbling to gratitude. We'll start with Micha Mocha.
Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai. Micha mocha nedar v'kodesh. Nora tehilot osef elech. Nora tehilot osef elech. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai. Micha mocha nedar v'kodesh. Nora tehilot osef elech. Nora tehilot osef elech. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 ya la 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 la.
So I want to pause for a moment because I said we were going to celebrate life, and we may have, in fact, things to celebrate this Shabbat. Do we have any birthdays or anniversaries? Okay, Drew, come on down. Anybody else with a birthday or anniversary? Shannon, love it. I feel like Marshall and Rebecca need to come too, because there was a significant birthday in their family this week. So anybody else celebrating? It doesn't even have to be a birthday or anniversary. Like, are you happy you're retired? Or got a new job? Or Misty's coming. Misty has a new job. And we just want to say it's very exciting because her new job is right here at Congregation Micah. Yay, Misty! I mean, you're all thinking she's been here this whole time, but she's in our office now all day long. We're very happy about it. Do we have anything else that we are celebrating? Acknowledging? Cheering on? Okay, well, this is good. This is enough. All right, so, okay, I have to explain. Can I share a little bit? All right, so Rebecca and Marshall are grandparents. Woo! And I don't know how many of you have been in our beautiful memorial garden out back, but 15 years ago, their very amazing daughter, Mara, was killed in a car accident. The memorial garden was instigated and inspired by her and her loss. And yesterday, their son, Zach, and their daughter-in-law, Danny, gave birth to Mara Shoshana Millman, born 15 years to the day after Mara passed. And we've only seen pictures, but we are excited to see more, so we are excited. We have many. Yeah, no doubt. And it's probably going to wallpaper your home. But anyway, we're just so very excited for you. All right, Drew, are you celebrating a birthday?
Yeah.
And what do you celebrate? Do you want to tell us what birthday this is?
Over 40.
Okay, fair. Well, you don't look a day over 30, so you could be honest.
Okay, over 45.
Well, good. You should have 45 more.
Okay.
Shannon, are you brave to tell us too?
Yes, 50.
Oh, that's so exciting. I'll be 50 this year also. I love that. Congratulations. And Misty, we know why you're here because you're celebrating your new best job ever.
Right?
Yes. Okay, great. So I think, Miss Lisa, can we offer Shekianu?
Oh, sure, of course.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. We thank God for creating each and every one of you, for sustaining you, and for enabling you to reach this moment and celebrate it with us. So thank you so much. Amen.
Thank you.
All right, lots of great, wonderful things to celebrate. And we ask God for protection, an extra dose if we can. We pray together.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukat, sukat shlomecha, v'hoshienu l'man shemecha. Help us to know that you're near, that your presence is here. Let us lie down in peace every night. And when we rise in the day, keep us sheltered, we pray. Guide us, God, with your love and your light. Baruch atah Adonai, hapori sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim.
We often think of Shabbat, and I've said this before many times, as being an obligation. We are told to guard it and to remember it and to keep it. And oftentimes we mistake it for being a day in which there are certain things we can't do. But in fact, first and foremost, it's a day that we're just supposed to be joyous. I'll take a lot of those days. So we get one right now. And the prayer that celebrates joy, it's a double joy, is Yismechu.
Yismechu v'malchucha, shomrei Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchucha, v'korei oned. Yismechu v'malchucha, shomrei Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchucha, v'korei oned. Shavi, kulam yispehu v'yatandu. עשית בו וקידשתו. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, ישמחו במלכותך וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, ישמחו במלכותך וקוראי עונג. חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה, זכר למעשה בראשית. חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה, זכר למעשה בראשית. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, ישמחו במלכותך וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, ישמחו במלכותך וקוראי עונג.
Before we rise for our central prayer, I feel like I need to offer the mid-service disclaimer of, you may think I'm not good at running the slides. And I feel like our board chair is going to put that in my review this year. But what I really need to tell you, and yes, I'm about to throw Rabbi Flip under the bus, is he didn't put the right slides in for the right prayers.
Oh no.
So I just want to make that clear. Please rise.
Adonai tziftai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah. האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים. ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
These next few moments are for your own prayer or a moment of meditation, and when you've completed it, please feel free to find your seat.
Creator of miracles, mercy, and life. Kol Tov Selah. Protect us from danger, keep us from harm. Kol Tov Selah. Creator of wonders, compassion, and hope. Kol Tov Selah. We give thanks for all that is good. Kol Tov Selah. Kol Tov Selah. Kol Tov Selah. Give thanks for all that is good. May God who is gracious be gracious to you. Kol Tov Selah. Protect you and bless you and care for you. Kol Tov Selah. For all you are and all you hope to be. Kol Tov Selah. We give thanks for all that is good. Kol Tov Selah. Kol Tov Selah. Kol Tov Selah. Give thanks for all that is good. Kol Tov Selah. Kol Tov Selah. Give thanks for all that is good.
So I'm very excited tonight to introduce you to one of our own Micah members and members of our Nashville Jewish community and academic community, Allison Schachter. I should say Dr. Allison Schachter. Allison is the chair of the Department of Jewish Studies at Vanderbilt. And the reason I asked her to be with us tonight, those of you who participate in Women's Circle already had a chance to meet her virtually, but Allison, amongst the many things that she studies and teaches about, and let me just say before I get there, if you go to the Vanderbilt website, one of the ways she's described is as a comparativist. And I've decided I love that term, because if my kids say to me, "Mom, you're being very judgy," I'm going to say, no, I'm a comparativist. and that's actually an academic pursuit, so it's okay. Anyway, but Allison did her academic work at two very unknown small schools out west, Berkeley and Stanford, and she has most recently been, and she'll tell you about, she's got a book of translations of Yiddish stories, and that's what she's going to talk to you a little bit about tonight. When I hear the word Yiddish, I think Fiddler on the Roof, and for I think a lot of us, that's sort of the scope of where we go when we hear Yiddish, or maybe we think dying language, not really spoken in any kind of active circles. But in fact, Yiddish has so much to offer and shed light on the role of women, both in their communities and not just in Judaism, but in the communities in which they lived in Europe. And without further ado, Allison, will you come join us, please? Oh, yeah, yes. Okay. And I'll show you, you can just tap on them when it's time. So here's your first one. Right
Okay,
here.
great.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to come speak. It's really lovely to be here. And so today I'm going to talk to you about Yiddish and women. And I wanted to just begin by saying that I work on both Hebrew and Yiddish literature, and I study the transformation of Jewish culture at the end of the 19th century through the mid-20th century, looking at the role specifically that writers and literature played, and most recently looking specifically at women. So it's important to know that during the 19th century, Jewish writers in Eastern Europe, and that's the sort of world that I think and write about, embraced literature as an expression of Jewish culture, secular literature, the novel, poetry. They recognized the power and prestige of literature, Russian culture had Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. France had Flaubert. Britain had Shakespeare, and then, obviously all of the novelists that came before. And as Jewish writers were trying to participate in the flourishing of modern Jewish culture and in the new ideas of nationalism, they wanted to have a literature too, to be on par with these other national literatures. And there was a debate that took place. Some writers actually chose to throw their hands in with the languages of the national languages of the countries where they lived. So Isaac Babel chose Russian, for example, Heine, German. But other writers thought that the future of Jewish literature and culture should be in a Jewish language. Some chose Hebrew, and some chose Yiddish. Now, and they argued, so shocking, amongst each other, which language should it be? And both of those languages had really distinct problems. Hebrew was a language that lacked a vocabulary to describe everyday life. So if you're writing a realist novel, how do you describe baking in Hebrew? How do you describe, petty squabbles? And Yiddish was a vernacular language that lacked a literary register. So both of these had issues, and both of these languages were associated with men and women differently. Hebrew was traditionally associated with men. It was men who largely studied texts and prayer and ritual, and Yiddish became associated with women. So Hebrew writers needed to incorporate and include women in their audience to imagine a new national literature, whereas Yiddish writers had to, especially male Yiddish writers, had to imagine Yiddish as a language that they could embrace. And so I want to think about, I printed double-sided. So when we think about the writers who participated in this project and the writers who get translated and the national narratives around these literatures, we often think about men. If you know a Yiddish writer, it's more than likely to be Sholem Aleichem, first and foremost, maybe Isaac Bashevis Singer, and the same is true for Hebrew as well. Moreover, the ways in which historians and cultural and literary critics have come to characterize the transformations of modernity has often been through the lens of looking at men, how men underwent transformations. So if you think about the history of Zionism and the figure of the new Hebrew man, that part of becoming modern in Jewish culture was a narrative about Jews becoming masculine and like men. And there's a whole complicated history about anti-Semitism and gender, but that becomes a central issue. So in my work, I became really interested in answering the question of what role did women play in the transformations of Jewish culture and Jewish modernity? How do we understand Jewish history and culture differently when we look at women? So, yeah, I think it's working.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have a book that I just wrote about this, a scholarly monograph called Women Writing Jewish Modernity, in which I look at the 5 women writers, both Hebrew and Yiddish writers, that you see pictured here. And the women writers that I'm studying, Elisheva Bichavsky, Leah Goldberg, Fradel Stock, Deborah Vogel, and Devorah Baron, were all born between 1888 and 1911 in Eastern Europe, and they lived in New York, Tel Aviv, and Poland. And we're reading them together, looking at women writers, we can learn new things about the ways that women and Jews more generally experienced modernity. So for men in this period, and I really love to show this image because I feel like it kind of, next slide, captures it. The project of, again, becoming modern was a product of transformation, of embracing new modes of masculinity. And here's an image from 1916 of a Warsaw Jewish men's sports club. So the question is, what did it mean for women? And I think this image is a really interesting one. Here you see an image of Miriam Karpelov, a New York Yiddish writer, one of the most prolific Yiddish women writers from the same year, although in New York. And you can see from this image a vision of a women's culture. Women are playing, dressed in secular modern clothes, playing guitar, relaxing, participating in the artistic movements of their day. And so the question becomes, and I'll show you this slide too, which is from a little bit later, and this is actually Bertha Kling's Literary and Cultural Salon in the Bronx in the 1920s. And here we can see groups of men and women together participating in the project of creating modern Jewish culture, a project that they take on together. And yet, we know so little about the women who participated in both modern Hebrew and Yiddish culture in this period, really up until through the interwar period. And why do we know so little about them? Because the archives don't contain their papers. Women were less likely to have their papers preserved when women published in journals. And now I'm sort of going to pivot to talking about Yiddish specifically. They were less likely to publish books. They were more likely to be serialized in the press. They were less likely to be written about and remembered for the work that they did. And most importantly, they were less likely to be translated, which is one of the reasons why we know so little about these women, because we have these amazing translations of Isaac Bashevis Singer, of Sholem Aleichem, but the women themselves, until very recently, were not translated into Yiddish. So most recently, I've taken on the project of translating one of these women, who I also write about, Fredel Stock, and she's a really amazing writer who is writing complicated modernist Yiddish stories about Jewish life in Eastern Europe and in New York. She was born in the town of Skala, you can see it there, right on the border between the Austro-Hungarian and Russian Empire, sometime in 1890. It's actually really hard to pin down. And she emigrated to New York City with her aunt in 1907 and took up residence in the city. And she quickly began to publish her poetry in New York at first in the Yiddish press, to actually a lot of positive feedback and great acclaim. She hung around with a group of writers called the Junge, or the Young Ones, who were the sort of modernist rabble-rousers in New York. And in 1916, she decided to write short stories and published a collection of short stories in 1919. So this was rarer. We have many Yiddish women writing and publishing and serializing novels in the press, but she gets her collection published. But it meets with mixed reviews, and she disappears from the literary scene shortly thereafter. According to the lexicon of Yiddish writers, she became mentally ill and died in an asylum sometime in the 1930s. And this turns out to be absolutely not true. So what we can find out about her when we dig through the archives is that at the height of her literary career in 1918, before the publication of her short story collection, she married Samuel Simcha Zinn, and the marriage in some ways was both the beginning and the end, or sort of, it happens at the height of the career, and it ends up being sort of the tail end of her career. Four years later, and I thought that I'd included that image here, but I don't see it. So her naturalization papers list her as divorced and her husband's location as unknown, but her profession remains a writer. So by 1923, divorced and still writing, she'd moved away from both family and the Yiddish literary world of the Lower East Side to 502 West 179th Street in Washington Heights, and she shared the apartment and her literary aspirations with a woman named Jenny Bedrick, who signs her naturalization papers and who turns out was a girlhood friend from this small town in Galicia, and who herself had actually been an aspiring Yiddish writer. So there was this interesting subterranean community of women who were trying to be read. So she didn't end her literary career in 1919, as many suppose, and in fact, she tried her hand as a playwright and sold her play, The American, Der Amerikaner, to Maurice de Schwartz's theater company. But in yet another setback, the play was never performed, and in 1927, she decided to try her hand at writing an English language novel, Musicians Only, which did not go over well. The New York Times described it as poor art with bad writing, and as it kind of reads like an authentic diary. Nevertheless, she got reviewed in the New York Times, which is a big deal, even if it was a bad review. And so the failure of this novel really marked an end to her early writing career. And by 1930, she no longer listed her profession as writer, but rather none in the census. So she moves again we can sort of trace this with her ex-husband on East 8th Street in Brooklyn, where he opened a photo studio. And she remained living with him until at least 1940. He eventually remarried and left New York, and the relationship presumably came to an end. In 1942, however, she wrote the very famous Yiddish editor of the Daily Vorwärts, Abe Kahan, and sent him from Los Angeles a story called A Soicher von Fell, or A Fur Merchant, which we also translate in this collection. So she was still writing, and her story appeared in the most widely circulated Yiddish press. So it's interesting that all these Yiddish writers claim that she disappeared, because in fact there she was in print to be read. But we know that she didn't stay in LA. In 1943, according to her application for a Social Security number, she was living in the Bronx, working for her cousin, Louis Stock, in the garment industry. And by 1966, she was institutionalized at the Rockland State Psychiatric Hospital, where she died alone in 1990, which is, I think, a really tragic story to think about this incredible writer writing these amazing stories to have sort of disappeared from history. So her path from writer to the garment industry really went against the grain of Jewish history. Jewish immigrant women typically began their careers working in that industry and then leaving it behind when they married. By choosing to be a writer, she also bucked Jewish convention for women, and she fought to create a literary career for herself, but like many other women, including her roommate, Jenny Bedrick, she did not succeed in finding a place for herself. Marrying and divorcing, working as a writer in New York, living with roommates and family, we can see a woman who is economically struggling to support herself while also grappling with mental illness. Male critics wrote her off as a hysteric who didn't have the mental stamina of a true artist, and they saw her tragic end as already predetermined, even as she fought valiantly against such ends. Her suffering was surely amplified by her treatment at the hands of critics who had trouble accepting women into their circles and who believed that women's suffering was a product of their innate hysterical tendencies. These beliefs silenced not only Stock, but countless other women writers who suffered similar fates and whose stories have not been told. So what do we learn about Jewish modernism and modern Jewish culture when we read Stock's stories and think about her life in relationship to other women writers? Well, first off, we learn that lots of women writers had these experiences of leaving the community, of disappearing, so that these are not personal stories of individual psychological crisis, but a larger social problem about the place of women in modern culture. We learn that the combined experience of being both women and Jews were experiences of new freedoms and new possibilities held tantalizingly close but out of reach as citizenship, suffrage, creative freedom, and freedom from prejudice. They were there. You could touch them. It was the interwar moment, but they couldn't be had completely. We also learn that these individual stories of women writers' struggles tell a larger story of social violence. And on top of this, that the history of translation has contributed to this, so that it is like this really, I think it's an incredible moment right now in that there's a lot of very recent translations of Yiddish women writers. And if you read Stock, what you also learn about is the experience of what it was like to be a young woman growing up in a small town in the Austro-Hungarian provinces. You learn about the experience of young women coming of age, of the experience of immigration, all through the lens of a woman who was also writing very experimental and interesting writing. So I wanted to share Stock's story today and the story of Yiddish women's writing because I think there are so many voices out there who really want to be read and who offer us some new way of thinking about the history of Jewish culture in our moment. So thank you for listening. And Shabbat
So much. Thank you. What we don't have time for as part of our service is some of the back and forth that we really got to appreciate when you joined us for Women's Circle, and just learning more about what drew you to this subject matter. And if you are interested in more, you can buy the book and you can reach out to me and I can let you know about doing that. So I think it's through Northwestern University Press, and I have all that contact information, and in fact they are offering us a discount. So just let me know, and thank you for joining us, Allison. And those were Allison's and Ben's very cute kids who lit the Shabbat candles tonight. We wanted to give you attribution, Ben, as well, because I think you were involved in that process. Okay. So. All right, we are going to offer words of healing, and we think about the following members as we offer our healing prayer this evening: Steve Geringer, Paul Richter, Crystal Miller, Charlie Baugh, Dick Eskind, Bibi Weinstein, Alex Morgan, Bill Drongowski, Edria Ragusin, Janice Grossman, Jill Gutnicht, Florence Wittenstein-Saperstein, Mike Harris, Caitlin Kopelman, Michael Graw, Karen Coltono, Jessica Waldron, Tara Sprott, George Hahn, Ann Norman, Julie Haynes, Gina Guglielmi, Alan Sherman, and Judith Mandel. If I've not mentioned the name of someone you'd like to include, please do so at this time. Thank you.
Susan Bernheim.
Thank you. Asher and Eden Rice.
For the hurt of body and of soul, for the suffering and pain, as you heal the ones who came before, may you heal us just the same. Refuat hanefesh v'haguf el na rifana, rifaynu Adonai refuah shalema, refuat hanefesh v'haguf el na rifana, Rifaynu Adonai refuah shalema, for the hurt of body and of soul, for the suffering and pain, as you healed the ones who came before, may you heal us just the same. As you healed the ones who came before, may you heal us just the same.
We rise together for the words of Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabech l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We honor the following yortzites on this Shabbat: Lawrence Egel, Mary Affronti, Benjamin Barish, Irving Kaplan, Abraham Isaac Silver, Travis Brooks Lynn, Diane Roth Reinhold, Peggy Wheel Stein, Irving Gurian, Jerry Alpert, Milton Lurie, Vera Gurian, Arnold L. Abrams, Eli Norman, Fran Schmerling, Jack L. Baum, Mara Beth Millman, Arnold Lefkowitz, Stephen Echlov, David Anschel, S. Bertram Friedman, Irene Levy Schwetz, Sally Schenker, Lisa E. Goldberg, Lucille Heifetz Horowitz, Helen Sandberg, and Ralph Max Cohen. We continue as a congregation mourning for Norman Heyman, Lucille Foley, and Sheldon Grossman. If I did not mention a name you'd like to include in our mourner's Kaddish, please do so. Yikadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudashah b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rava min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may the memories of our loved ones be every day for us a blessing. Amen. Just a few announcements. You're welcome to be seated if you'd like. Mahjong is not going to meet until February. People just felt like they wanted to take a little break, let this surge, God willing, unsurge. And so Mahjong will not happen until February, but we are resuming in-person midweek and religious school. Midweek came on Wednesday, religious school this Sunday. Schmooze and Views will be this coming Thursday. You can join us in person or via Zoom. Torah study, of course, is every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on Zoom. And if you'd like, for adult education, Rabbi Kulik from West End Synagogue and I are leading part 2 of our virtual conversations this coming Thursday at noon. You did not have to be part of one. In fact, one has nothing to do with the other. So feel free to join us even if you missed the first one. You can find that link information on our website and in the e-blast. Beginning January 1st, we started our January drive, which is the Vandy Children's Hospital Toy Drive. So you can drop off a donation at the office the next time you're here. And if you want more details about anything going on at the congregation, and I like to say there's always lots going on, please do not hesitate to visit our website. Ms. Lisa,
Man.
shall we close with a song?
Yes, join me in a little Oseh Shalom.
Okay.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu 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 ve'al kol Yisrael.
So, we light 2 candles at minimum for Shabbat, for Zachor v'Shamor, to remember and guard. Which one has failed us on this Shabbat? Is it Zachor? I think we already remembered because we're here, so that one's done. We still got Shamor. We could use a little guarding. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.